All right, so in this video, we're going to be solving quadratics when the a term is a 1. All right, so we're given for number 1, solve the equation x squared minus 11x plus 19 is equivalent to negative 5. All right, so step 1 into solving quadratics by factoring would be to get the formation of ax squared plus bx plus c is equivalent to 0. So this basically just means that you want to get a 0 on the right side and bring every term over to your left-hand side. We have a negative 5 on the right side, so to get rid of it, let's add 5. And that gives you a 0 on the right, which was your motive. And we have on the left an x squared minus 11x plus 19 and 5 gives you a 24. So once you have this formation, we can then see that the a term is a 1 for this. All right, so that takes us to step number 2, which would be to factor. All right, so to factor this quadratic, you want to get two numbers that multiply to your c term and at the same time adds to your b term. All right, so in this case, you want to get two numbers that multiply to your c term, which is a 24. And at the same time, these two numbers have to add to your b term, which is a negative 11. And these numbers would be an 8 and 3. Both of them have to be negative for the conditions to be satisfied. All right, so then you would factor it into x minus 8 times the quantity of x minus 3. And then from there, step number 3 would be to set both factors equal to 0. All right, so think of it as if we had x times y is equivalent to nothing. The only way that this equation would be true is if either x is a 0 or if y is a 0. Right, because 0 times some number would give you a 0, or even a number times 0 would give you a 0, or even 0 times 0 would give you a 0 at the end. So using that same logic, either this factor, which is x minus 8, would be equivalent to 0, or that factor x minus 3 would be equivalent to 0. And we solve both of these two linear equations, which upon adding 8 for the first one, we end up with an x value of 8. And for the second equation we have, if you add 3 on both of your sides, then that leaves you with an x value of 3. All right, so both 8 and 3 would satisfy the equation. Quadratics can have either two solutions, one solution, or no solution. Those other cases come up later on as well. So that's number 1. All right, so now for number 2, we're given 5x squared minus 44x plus 120 is equivalent to negative 30 plus 11x. All right, so again, step 1 would be to get a 0 on one of our sides, meaning bring every term over to one side. Let's add 30 on both of our sides to get rid of our constants. And we combine our constants with our constants. And then to get rid of the x's, we have a plus 11x. So the inverse would be you take away 11x on both of your sides and combine that with the x's on the left-hand side. And these two terms go away. And we have a 0 on the right, which was your motive. And down comes your 5x squared. And then negative 44x's minus 11x's gives you a negative 55x. And then we have a 120 and 30 gives you a c value of 150. Okay, so in this step, we can see that every single term, 5x squared, 55x, and 150, all three terms have a common factor of 5, right? So if all three terms have a common factor, it's better to divide every single term on both of your sides by that common factor to make your numbers easier to factor. Okay, so this step would be skipped if there's no common factor for all your terms, but since we have a common factor, it's better to simplify it. All right, so 5x squared divided by 5 gives you a 1x squared. And then negative 55x divided by 5 gives you a negative 11x. And then we have a 150 divided by 5 gives you a 30. And then 0 divided by 5 would be a 0. Okay, so this is where we have the form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, where the a term is a 1. And once you have this, you want to factor. All right, so get two numbers that multiply to your c term of 30. And at the same time, they add to your b term, which is a negative 11. And these numbers would be 6 and 5. Okay, so But again, both of them should be negative for both conditions to be satisfied. And that's it. We can factor it up into x minus 6 times the quantity of x minus 5 is equivalent to 0. And once you have everything factored, then either this factor or that factor, which x minus 6 or x minus 5 would be equivalent to 0. And we can solve both of these equations, which if you add 6 for the first one, we end up with the next value of 6. Or if you were to add 5 for the second one, then we end up with the next value of 5. Okay, so this quadratic has two solutions of either 6 or 5, which takes us to number 3. Okay, so we're given for number 3, solve the equation x squared plus 5x minus 35 is equivalent to 3x. Okay, so again, you want to bring every term over to one side. So if we get rid of the 3x over here, subtract away that term, then that gives us a 0 on the right side, and we have an x squared, and then 5x minus 3x gives you a 2x. Bring down 35 as is, and let's factor, right? So two numbers, then multiply to your c term of negative 35, and at the same time adds to your b term, which is a 2. Okay, so these numbers should be 7 and negative 5. So once you get these, we can factor. We have x plus 7, positive 7, and we have an x minus 5, that's your negative 5 factor. And then we can set them both equal to 0, which either x plus 7 should be equivalent to nothing, or x minus 5 should be equivalent to 0. And then if we subtract away 7, these are just one-step equations, and we end up with the next value of negative 7. And for the other case, if we add 5, then that would give you an x value of 5. Okay, now number 4. This is just a matter of practice. The more that you do, the better you get at them. But they're all the same format. Okay, so we're given for number 4, solve 2x squared minus 18x plus 42 is equivalent to 6. All right, so the first step, we should bring every term over to one side. So to get rid of our 6, we can subtract away 6 on both of our sides, and that gives you a 0 on the right, and we have a 2x squared minus 18x. These terms just come down. And then we can combine our two numbers, which 42 minus 6 gives you a 36. Okay, and then we can divide every single term by 2. So always check in this step if you can divide every term by a common factor, which we can for this case. 2x squared divided by 2 gives you a 1x squared. Negative 18x divided by 2 gives you a negative 9x. And 36 divided by 2 gives you an 18. And that's just a 0. So again, our same condition, which two numbers that multiply to your c term of 18 and add to your b term, which is a negative 9. And these numbers would be a negative 6 and a negative 3. Okay, so we can factor it up into x minus 6 times x minus 3, which you would set both of these factors then equal to 0. And in the first case, if you were to add 6, the next should be a 6. In the second case, if you set x minus 3 equal to 0, then upon adding by 3, the next should be a 3. Okay, and these should be the two solutions for our quadratic. All right, so 2 more left. Let's go over number 5. So for number 5, we're given solve 4x squared minus 8x minus 145 is equivalent to negative 5. All right, so again, bring every term over to one side by adding 5 on both of your sides. And that gives you a 0 on the right, and we have on the left a 4x squared minus 8x, and then negative 145 plus 5 gives you a negative 140. Okay, so every term, once again, would be divisible by 4 in this case, which if you divide every single thing on both of your sides by 4, then that gives you, let's check, 4x squared divided by 4 should be x squared, and then negative 8x divided by 4 would be negative 2x, and negative 140 divided by 4, that should be, I believe, 35. Okay, and that would be a 0. And then same idea, you want to get two numbers and multiply your c term, which is a negative 35, and adds to your b term, which is a negative 2. Okay, so these numbers would be a 5 and 7, so 7 and 5, and 7 should be negative for it to work out. Okay, so then we factor it up into x minus 7 times x plus 5. And if the first factor, x minus 7, is equivalent to 0, then we add 7 on both of our sides to obtain an x value of 7. And if the second factor, which is x plus 5, is equivalent to 0, then we subtract away 5 to obtain an x value of negative 5. All right, and last problem, number 6. Okay, so solve 5x squared minus 9x plus 18 is equivalent to 4x squared. All right, so again, bring every term over to one side. So these 4x squares, if we get rid of it on both of our sides, bring them over to the left, then that gives you a 0 on the right. And we have a 1x squared minus 9x plus 18 would be equal to 0. And then the condition would be to get two numbers and multiply to your c term, which I'll put at the bottom. The c term is an 18, and the b term would be a negative 9. And these numbers would be 6 and 3. Okay, but both of them have to be negative for it to work out. So we have the factors of x minus 6 times x minus 3 would be equivalent to 0. And then if the first factor, x minus 6, is equivalent to 0, then x should be a 6 upon adding 6 on both of our sides. Or if x minus 3 is equivalent to 0, then you add 3 and that gives you an x value of 3. Okay, so, and that's basically it. Solving when the a term is a 1 is a pretty simple process, but when the a term is not a 1, that's a bit longer of a process.